Notion's multi-formatted relational databases make it a powerful place to manage your relationships and your sales pipeline. So let's walk through a framework that leverages those functionalities to create a sophisticated and streamlined system of contact and sales management. And this system's also detailed on a post on Notion VIP, and it's also available as a fully developed template, both of which I'll link to within this video description on YouTube. So if you're familiar with any of my other resources or you're using my bulletproof workspace methodology, you know that my foremost recommendation for any Notion workspace is to centralize information in related master databases and then to create filtered views of that information within contextual dashboards. So this contact management system is kind of a subset of a workspace that integrates a variety of other master databases. And the essential master databases of this system are going to be a contacts database for individual people, and then a brands database for the companies and nonprofits and other organizations that those individuals represent. So as a part of this method of integrating master databases, we're also going to favor relation properties over select properties. So let me explain what I mean by that. If you have countries, for example, and you have multiple databases where you're going to want to assign a country to the items, rather than creating independent select properties within each of those databases and creating all of the countries as options within those select properties, you can have one master countries database and then use relations within all of those other databases to choose a country from that master countries database. And so that's going to afford a variety of advantages. It'll help you to keep your information accurate and consistent. It'll allow you to minimize redundant work. You can create contextual dashboards both within the countries and then also within the items of other databases. You can list the associated country. And then you can also navigate intuitively between related databases. So that's why we're going to start with a few geographic databases. Now, if your contacts and brands don't hail from a variety of cities, states, and provinces and countries, then these may not be directly applicable for you, but the concepts will be helpful because you're going to want to apply this approach for other types of information. So you can see here that we have those cities, states, and provinces and countries databases, along with those essential databases that we'll be working with, the brands and contacts databases. And the way that this will work is we're going to relate each brand and contact to a city. And each city is going to be related to a country and perhaps a state or province. And using roll-up properties, we're going to have the ability to pull in the state or province and the country from the related city for contacts and brands. So you'll see exactly how that works and why it's helpful, but it's really going to keep your information clean and eliminate redundancy in your work. So this is also going to allow you to create filtered views of your contacts and brands within the countries, states and provinces, and cities databases. So this, among other benefits, will keep you from having to create individual select properties within your brands and contacts databases, and within those select properties, listing all of your options for countries, states and provinces, and cities. So let's jump into this cities database. And you can see that our default view here is a list of cities, and it's sorted by the city's country and then the city's name. So this list looks nice and it's easy to navigate and click into any city, but the table makes it easy to see the city's properties and to quickly edit those properties. So of course, the title property here is going to be just city. And then we have two relation properties. Remember, this whole system's kind of running through cities in order to allow us to use roll-ups to minimize work and populate information automatically. So each city is going to be related to a country. This is a relation property that relates to the country's database. So for each city, you can choose a country from the country's database. And if the city has a state or province, this relation property is related to the state and provinces database. So you can choose a state or province for the city as well. Now there's two properties that are hidden here, and they're hidden because you won't typically use them when you're accessing the city's database directly, but they're additional relations properties. And of course, they are the contacts and brands database. So remember, every contact and brand is going to be related to a city, and each city is going to be related to a country and perhaps a state or province. So that's going to allow you to use roll-up properties within brands and contacts to pull in the country and perhaps the state or province for the related city. So each city can also function as its own sort of contextual dashboard. If we open up New York, for example, we can see a filtered view of the brands database and a filtered view of the contacts database. And both of these linked databases link to their respective original databases, those essential brands and contacts database, and they display their items in this nice gallery here. So for the brands, we just see the name of the brand and then its website, which is easy to click and visit. And then for contacts, we see the full name of the contact, the associated brand, email address, and phone number for quick reference. So these linked databases are going to be filtered to show only those where the city property is the current city that we're viewing. In this case, it's New York. So rather than creating these linked databases for each new city, we have a template that creates them automatically. So if we pull down our little drop-down menu here next to the New button, we see that we have a city template. And if we click to edit that template, we can see those linked databases, brands and contacts. And these linked databases use self-referencing filters. They filter for the template itself, so that when you actually implement the template, when you create a new city, this filter is going to be replaced with that new city. So that is the cities database. And because cities are kind of the hub of all of these relationships, the other geographic databases are quite a bit simpler. So let's look next at countries. So the default view for the countries database is going to be a list that sorts the countries alphabetically, and you can see each country's flag, and that's simply the page icon for each country, which you can choose from the emojis, which is quite simple. So our table view allows us to see the properties and edit the countries quickly and easily. So you can see that the only relation for countries is cities, because cities is the hub of these relationships. So for each country, you'll select a city, but in practice, you'll really create a city, and when you do so, you'll associate it with a country and then perhaps a state. So because you do that, you can use a roll-up property to automatically populate the state or the states, all of the states for each country, because it's going to pull in each state for the cities that you populate. So in this configuration here, you can see that we choose the cities property, that's this relation here, and for that related database, for each of the items that you select, you want to pull in the state or province. And then we just want to show the original. So this is just going to list all of the states and provinces associated with the selected cities. So just as we saw in our city, we can open up a country and view it as sort of its own contextual dashboard. So here you can see that we have all of our selected cities that are related, and then all of the states that are pulled in for those cities. And then if we scroll down, we can see the brands and the contacts that are within this particular country. So these are galleries, and the brands gallery displays the name of the brand, the city where it's located, because these are all in the United States. We know because we're in the United States item. And then we also have the website for the brand as well. So this contacts links database is going to display all of the contacts within the United States, and it will display the full name of each contact within this gallery view, along with the contact city, the associated brand, and then the contact's email address and phone number for quick reference. So just as we saw with the cities, our countries can be quickly populated with a template. So if we open up the countries template, we can see that we have the brands database and the contacts database. These are linked databases linking to the brands and contacts database, pre-formatted and filtered using this self-referencing filter, so that when a country is created using this template, the filter will automatically use that new country to filter the brands and contacts. So our states and provinces are going to work exactly the same way as countries. And if you have a lot of contacts or brands within a single country, then it can be helpful to create views for that particular country. In this case, we have US states. This is a list, and it's filtered to show only the states or provinces where the country is the United States, and it's sorted alphabetically. But as always, we have our full table that makes viewing the properties and editing the properties easy and efficient. So our title property is the state or province, and then we relate each state or province to a city because that's a hub of all of these relationships. And then with this roll-up property, when we choose a city, we can automatically pull in the country for that city. So for states or provinces that have multiple cities, it's going to pull in the country for each of those, which is always going to be the same. Notion doesn't currently offer an option to display only the unique items. We have to display all of them, but the purpose of this is to allow us to create filters and views. And so listing the country multiple times is not going to disrupt that. And of course, just like our cities and countries, opening up any of these states or provinces will show their contacts and brands, and they can be quickly created using the state or province template. So those are our geographic databases. And remember, even if these specifically don't apply to your work or to your workspace, the concepts of employing these related databases and turning them into contextual dashboards certainly will apply. That's evident throughout the bulletproof workspace methodology that you can find on Notion VIP. And I'll link to that within the YouTube video description here as well. So let's move on to our essential databases, starting with brands. And remember, brands are going to be all of the companies and the nonprofits and the other organizations that you reference throughout your workspace, and particularly those that are associated with your individual contacts. So as you'll see, brands have a variety of categories. You can include clients, partners, vendors, prospects, and your own brand or your own team. And then what you see here is that we have a gallery for each of those categories. And these galleries are going to display the name of the brand. If you're working with kind of a global collection of brands, you can display the related country, which nicely includes that country's flag as the icon. And then it might be helpful to display the website as well for quick access or just for aesthetics. But if we jump down to our full table view, we can see all of the properties associated with the brand. So that title property is just going to be brand. And then this multi-select is where we identify the category or categories of each brand. So as I mentioned, we can include clients, existing clients. We can include the name of the team that's using this workspace. In this case, we have this dummy company, Loggerhead Labs. We have partners, prospects, and vendors as well. Of course, you can customize these categories for the nature of your workspace. And this is a multi-select, so you can apply more than one to any given brand. And then we have a URL property for each brand's website, a phone property for the phone number. And then we have our geographic properties. So remember, cities are the hub of these relationships. So you only have to choose a city from the city's database. And then these roll-up properties are going to pull in the country for that city as well as the state or province as applicable. So looking at the configuration here, we choose the city relation, and then from that city's database, we want to pull in the country property and just display the original country. So then we have a text property for the postal code. And you might think that this should be a number, but it should actually be a text property because you're not performing any calculations on the postal code. You're just using it in conjunction with other pieces of text. And sometimes numbers that start with 0 can display funky in number properties. So it's best just to leave the postal code as a text property. And then you have a text property for the street address as well. So for those brands that are categorized as prospects, you can apply a value to this sales stage property. So here we just have a conventional set of options for the sales stage. This is just kind of a conventional sales cycle that starts with the initial inquiry and concludes with contact. And you also, or contract, and then you also have a lost option for any lost prospects. But of course, I never use that, and neither do you, hopefully. Now, we don't have a one option here because a one prospect is no longer going to be a prospect. It's going to become a client. So what this allows you to do is utilize your sales pipeline. This is a board formatted view of the database, and all of the items are grouped by their sales stage. And this view is going to be filtered to show only the brands that are within the prospect category. So you can easily drag these prospects from one stage to the other, and it will update the value within that particular item. So these cards display the name of the brand, the country, and the website, just as we've seen in other views. So just as we saw in our geographic databases, these country items serve as contextual dashboards. So if we open one, we see all of the properties for the brand, and then we see a couple of linked databases. So this linked view of contacts is familiar by now. We're seeing only the contacts that are associated with this particular brand. And it displays the full name, the website, and the phone number. And then we have a meetings and conversations linked database. So you may maintain a database of meetings and conversations or meetings and events. That's a big part of the bulletproof methodology. And when you do, you can relate that meetings and conversations database to your brand's database. In this case, it applies to your prospects. So if you hold a sales call, you can relate it to the brand that it's associated with. And then within the brand, you can see a list of the conversations that you've had throughout the sales cycle for quick reference. So we'll look at the meetings and conversations database and see how you would relate it to a brand. So just as we saw in our geographic databases, we have templates for brands. Now, these templates are going to be mostly familiar, but the prospect template is going to include that linked database for meetings and conversations, whereas just the general brand template is not. And the reason for that is if you're familiar with the bulletproof methodology, you know that when a brand becomes a client, it likely also becomes a bucket. And within your buckets pages, you will include all of your linked meetings and events among a variety of other linked databases. So again, we're focused on contacts here, but you can learn more about that in the bulletproof coverage, which I'll link to. So that is the brands database, and we can move on here to the contacts database. And your contacts database is going to include the same categories, but those categories are going to be automatically populated. So let's look at the full table view of contacts. And these properties are going to be similar to what you would see in a conventional CRM. So we have the full name as the title property, and then the category is automatically populated. It's a roll-up property, and what it does is it pulls in the category of the selected brand. So you have this relation property that relates to the brand's database, and you can choose any of the items from that brand's database. And then this roll-up property will pull in the category for the selected brand, and that allows you to keep your information consistent and reduce redundancy. So then you have text properties for the first name and the last name of the contact. The first name is useful for if you're using mail merge tools and you want to apply the first name to kind of a boilerplate message. And then last name is good for sorting. I like to sort contacts by their last names. So then we have a text property for the job title, if you want to include that, an email property for the email address, 2 phone properties, one for the mobile phone, one for work, 2 URL properties, one for the LinkedIn profile, the other for the Twitter profile. And then we have the geographic properties. So once again, cities are kind of the hub of these relationships. So you only have to choose a city for each brand, and then the country and the state or province will be automatically populated based on the city that you choose. This will pull in or roll up the countries and states and provinces for the selected cities. So then we have those text properties for the postal code and street address. And then we have a date property for each contact's birthday. You can set a reminder for sending well wishes or even a gift. And then we have a files and media property for the contact's headshot. And this is kind of a fun feature. If you'll go to the contact's LinkedIn profile, or if they send you a headshot, you can add it here. And when you display a gallery view of the contacts, you can choose the headshot as the page cover. Now, of course, you're not, or the card preview, I should say, and you're not going to want to do this for all of your contacts, of course, but for those that you engage with frequently, you may. So we have a view here of the Loggerhead Labs team. This is the team that this kind of demo workspace is built around. And you can see here that for the card preview, we've selected that headshot property. And so it displays the uploaded image as the card preview for the gallery, which displays really nicely. So any team that you're working with regularly, you want to add sort of a sense of connection to the team. You want to add a face to all those emails that you're exchanging. This is a great way to do it. And so this gallery also displays the full name of the contact, the email address, and the phone number for quick reference. So just as we saw in all of our other databases, these contacts database items contain information within them. Now, the kind of information that you want to store within your contacts will really depend on the nature of your workspace. So the template here is really kind of open-ended. We have this contact template, and all it is just kind of a heading for notes with a placeholder toggle. So this is where you can apply contact-specific notes about their preferences or their family relationships or anything that you want to remember for reference later. You can add here for each new contact. But for the most part, you'll probably want to keep your notes within the brand, or if you're taking the bulletproof approach, within the bucket. So those are our essential databases, contacts and brands. So let's quickly take a look at kind of some sample databases that you may want to relate to contacts and brands as well. Now, if you follow the bulletproof approach, then you're going to have many other master databases in your workspaces, and many of those databases you'll want to connect or relate to contacts and brands. So here is just kind of some trimmed down examples. We talked about the meetings and conversations database, how you can include meetings and conversations within brands as you're nurturing them through the sales cycle. But conversely, within your meetings and conversations, you can include a filtered view of all of the contacts that are associated with that meeting or conversation. So you can see that this meetings and conversations database is related to the contacts database. And we've called that relation here an attendees for this particular property because it's going to pertain to those who attended the meeting or conversation. So we selected these contacts from the contacts database, and they display nicely within this linked view of that contacts database with those same properties we've seen in other linked views of the contacts database. So if you keep a meetings and events or a meetings and conversations database, this inner page is going to contain a lot more information, but for the sake of demonstrated the relation to contacts, I've only included that linked database. So you very likely include a projects database among your master databases as well. And I won't get into the details of this example. Those are all in other materials. We're focused on contacts here. But if you open up a project, you can see, once again, a list of contacts who are related to this particular project. In this case, we've called that relation property the team because this would be the team of contacts that are involved with this particular project. So you can really sense the power of this approach of consolidating all of your information within related master databases and then creating filtered views of that information within these sorts of contextual dashboards. So that is this system for managing relationships and your sales pipeline using the power of Notion. And again, we'll include a link to the post on Notion VIP within the YouTube video description, along with a link to the fully developed template. And if you run into any roadblocks as you implement these strategies on your own, you can find me on Twitter at William Nutt, and I'll look forward to seeing what you build with it.